Welcome to the Zen Studies podcast. I'm Domio Burke. Thanks to supporting members of the podcast. Renewing member Susan from Newberg, Oregon, and new members Lena Gison from Portland, Oregon, Gabriel from Freiburg, Germany, Adele from Reston, Virginia, and Frank from King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So I am on sabbatical for the month of August, so instead of producing a full episode, I did some editing on a recent talk I gave at Bright Way Zen, talking about politics as a Buddhist. This is, of course, a very timely topic with a major election coming up in the U.S. in just over 2 months. I hope you'll enjoy. All right, so I'm calling this talk Talking About Politics as a Buddhist. Partway through writing up these notes, I was like, well, what do we mean by politics? It's something that can be kind of hard to define, but I found a very broad definition that I think is good. Politics is the set of activities that are associated with making decisions in groups or other forms of power relations among individuals, such as distribution of resources or status. So I was kind of thinking of this as what we should do, right? What we should do as a local community or a city or a county or a country or the planet, right? What should we as a group do? So I figured I would start off by reviewing some of the very rich Buddhist teachings on right speech. And then with that as a context, we can start talking about, so how do we have conversations about politics? And also, I realized partway through that it doesn't really matter if you tend to actually talk about politics with either people who agree with you or people who disagree with you. We're all having like a conversation about politics in our head, even if we don't bother to say it, right? Even if we're like, I know though I don't like having those conversations, chances are inside we're still kind of nursing this narrative. So the Buddha on right speech, this is from Kunda the silversmith, Pali Canon Sutta. And how is one made pure in 4 ways by verbal action? There is the case where a certain person abandoning false speech abstains from false speech. He doesn't consciously tell a lie for his own sake, for the sake of another, or for the sake of any reward. He speaks the truth, holds to the truth, is firm, reliable, no deceiver of the world. So that's the one. Abandoning divisive speech. He abstains from divisive speech. What he has heard here, he does not tell there to break those people apart from these people. Thus reconciling those who have broken apart or cementing those who are united. He loves concord, delights in concord, enjoys concord, and speaks things that create concord. Abandoning abusive speech, she abstains from abusive speech. She speaks words that are soothing to the ear, that are affectionate, that go to the heart, that are polite, appealing, and pleasing to people at large. And then the 4th, abandoning idle chatter. She abstains from idle chatter. She speaks in season, speaks what is factual, what is in accordance with the goal, that is the Dhamma and the Vinaya. She speaks words worth treasuring, seasonable, reasonable, circumscribed, connected with the goal of liberation. This is how one is made pure in 4 ways by verbal action. So we have some rich Buddhist teachings that set a very high bar for our speech. So many of you are familiar with this one, where the Buddha says there are 3 factors you should consider before speaking. Is it beneficial? Or first of all, is it true? True and or factual, beneficial, and then endearing or agreeable to others. So if it's untrue, unbeneficial, and unendearing, keep it zipped. Untrue, unbeneficial, but endearing, don't say it. True, but not beneficial or endearing, don't say it. True and endearing, but not beneficial, don't say it. If it's true, beneficial, and endearing, of course, but you still consider the proper time for saying it. And you might need to say something that is true and beneficial, but is not endearing, is hard to hear, in which case you consider carefully when to say it. Then, of course, we have our precepts on speech. Do not speak dishonestly, communicate truthfully. Do not dwell on past mistakes, create wisdom from ignorance. And do not praise self or blame others, maintain modesty, extol virtue. And then one of my favorites is Dogen from the Shishobo, the 4 ways bodhisattvas embrace living beings. And those 4 ways are free giving, kind speech, beneficial action, and identity action, or kind of sharing the same aim or being in the same boat with living beings. So kind speech, he says, means that when you see sentient beings, you arouse the heart of compassion and offer words of loving care. It is contrary to cruel or violent speech. In the secular world, there is the custom of asking after someone's health. In the Buddha way, there is the phrase, please treasure yourself, and the respectful address to seniors, may I ask how you are? It is kind speech to speak to sentient beings as you would to a baby. Praise those with virtue, pity those without it. If kind speech is offered, little by little, kind speech expands. Thus, even kind speech that is not ordinarily known or seen comes into being. Be willing to practice it for this entire present life. Do not give up world after world, life after life. Kind speech is the basis for reconciling rulers and subduing enemies. Those who hear kind speech from you have a delighted expression and a joyful mind. Those who hear of your kind speech will be deeply touched. They will always remember it. Know that kind speech arises from kind heart, and kind heart from the seed of compassionate heart. Ponder the fact that kind speech is not just praising the merit of others, it has the power to turn the destiny of the nation. This is a lot of guidance around speech. At the very least, it makes it clear our speech matters. I mean, right speech is one aspect of the Eightfold Path. 3 out of 10 of our grave precepts have to do with speech. And it's not just about its effect on others, but that certainly counts, but also the effect on our own mind, our own habits. But now, when we're talking about politics in terms of what we should do as a society, as a group, as a country, how do we be responsible citizens? How do we be engaged bodhisattvas? It would be very easy to take all of these strictures on speech and just, well, it might not be easy not to say anything at all, but at least, we could be trying not to say anything at all, right? We could just, something came out. But for the most part, if I'm going to keep these rules, I just won't engage. But that's a cop-out, right? Now we have the Bodhisattva vow, and we need to be responsible. At what time is it time to speak up about injustice, environmental destruction, the erosion of democracy, the rise of fascism? Usually when the things like fascism has arisen in the past, there's all kinds of people who are like, didn't speak up. So if you like to talk about politics and feel that you do so in a way that's consistent with your aspirations and vows, I think that's great. But I'm imagining that many folks here today are like me. I mean, I don't have too many conversations about, I used to. A lot of times, whether these conversations are with people who mostly agree with us or people who disagree, they tend to be unsatisfying, agitating, depressing. And oftentimes afterwards, even if I feel like, I agreed with somebody or whatever, we talked about some important things, a lot of times afterwards, there's kind of like a bad taste in my mouth. I realized some of my speech was divisive or judgmental, self-aggrandizing. So my recommendation is to keep the Buddhist teachings on speech in mind, or to study them, to absorb them, to contemplate them. But in the moment, it's very unlikely that we're going to be able or willing to go through, that whole checklist before we say anything. I mean, it's a conversation, right? People say stuff, and then if you're constantly saying, is it true? Is it beneficial? Is it, like, you're just not going to say anything at all. My suggestion is simply to ask yourself, why am I speaking at any given moment? And this unfolds into many other questions, of course. What am I getting out of this conversation or engagement or expressing myself? What do I hope to get out of it? What do I hope to achieve? Am I achieving it? If we are being mindful about why we are talking about things, then I think we need to be honest. So here's some of the ones that I came up with. Assigning, and remember, this is also like what's going on in your head when you are trying to explain or make sense of political things. Assigning blame. Maybe this is about fixing the problem, like what's causing it, we can search it out. But that's not usually what it's about, right? It's usually just to feel better that we're not to blame. Those people are to blame. Making sense of things, hoping to make the world seem like a place of order, and so we can predict and understand. So that kind of relieving a sense of anxiety about the way things are. Trying to convince others because the fact of the difference of their opinion feels uncomfortable or threatening. Venting. This is one where the Buddha said idle chatter is no good. And I'm kind of like, that's a very like kind of masculine, hardcore kind of attitude, right? Sometimes we just have to talk. Sometimes it's just like, but can we be mindful as we're doing it? I just needed to get together with this good friend so that we can like bitch about world going to hell in a handbasket. Okay, we did our thing. Building up our sense of self, seeking reinforcement for our own views, wanting to feel right or morally superior, compulsion to assert our view when we hear an alternative one, vilifying others. If we feel disempowered, the least thing that we can do is try to hurt the other side or the other person, even though they don't hear it. And then, of course, the constructive things, right? Learning from others, actively seeking solutions together, seeking to understand those we disagree with, respectfully standing up for what we see to be right. in terms of mindfulness while speaking. So in our precepts, we have the 3 pure precepts, right? So there's cease from harmful action, do only good, do good for others. And so this really describes beautifully the progression of behavior change. So whenever there's something that we want to change or be more mindful about, the first thing is just to stop the patterns that we've gotten into. And we may not know what else to do, right? So maybe momentarily, if you are somebody who gets into vehement political discussions, or even just in your own head, if you're, constantly hashing over like, well, who's to blame and why is this and why is the world this way, to just trying to let that go. But then we don't stop there, right? It's not just like, don't think about it. So then what is good? What is beneficial? And then really engaging again, doing what is good for others. So here was just a little list of things. So when we are speaking, paying attention to the body, our physical attitude, I think when we get into arguments and stuff, we can get kind of tensed up, like we're ready to fight. Is there a sense of agitation, energy? There can be a sense, it depends on your style of speaking, but there can be a way that just like somebody's still talking and you're just like, the next thing is just ready to pop out of your mouth. Noticing like, I'm finding it difficult to listen. I want to just, state my position over and over. Our voice, the volume of our voice. Are we speaking quickly? Are we leaving any space between what somebody else says and what we say? The content, are we repeating ourselves? If somebody with us is agreeing, are we just piling on and building each other's sense of like, yeah, right, yeah. Pontificating at length, or if it's with somebody you disagree with about even a minor thing, right? Is it just back and forth? And they state their thing, and you state your thing, and they state their thing, you state their thing. And somebody listening is just going like, because no headway is being made whatsoever. People aren't actually listening to each other, and it's ridiculous. Here's an interesting one, which I've found myself doing, and it's tricky. I can't say that I've worked so much on the skillfulness. Overstating the case. And I think this is a form of dishonesty or breaking not speaking truthfully. So here's an example, of, there's a big homeless problem in Portland because the city is so mismanaged. And then you could have a nice conversation confirming this idea. And you know what else the city did wrong? And the city did wrong this, and the city is poorly managed, dysfunctional, right? Okay. Now, here's what's more honest. I have read that Portland's system of city government, with at-large council members heading separate departments, may have seriously limited the city ability to respond effectively to homelessness. Now we can have a conversation about, where did you read that? And is that a reliable source, a good newspaper or whatever? What have they tried to do where effectiveness has been limited? How much do you know about the city government structure? So it's that more nuanced thing. But I notice when I'm feeling, disempowered or want to feel that kind of affirmation for my point of view or something, I'm just more likely to just state it in terms that are glossed over. Conclusions, a sense of satisfaction about having solved the problem. When usually it's all just theoretical, not applied, right? All of us can be the armchair politicians, like, oh, if we just did this, if we just did that, if we just decreased taxes, then all would be well, right? And if any of us actually got into politics and had to do this, we would realize it's not that simple. And then, of course, the othering. The other side is fundamentally different, morally bankrupt, consciously greedy or self-interested, ignorant, victim of greater forces trying to manipulate them. That is what both sides lob at each other. Mean-spirited, dangerous. So the more mindfulness we can bring, the more choices that we have. It's like just the process of shining the light of awareness on what we're doing gradually over time. To me, it feels like time kind of slows down. The unfolding of things tends to slow down a little bit. Notice when I first started practicing was just, you say something, bam, I'm going to respond. And then even, it might be a day later that I go, oh, I did that thing again, right? And then maybe a few hours later, you recognize you did it again. Then maybe immediately afterwards, you recognize you did it again. Then there's the frustrating point where you recognize it as you're doing it, but you can't stop it. Then there's the point where you kind of recognize it. Oh, this is one of those situations again, and I can feel this desire to arise, but then we kind of still do it anyway. And then there's that, that magical moment where we actually caught it early enough that we were able to say, okay, in this example, right? Okay, instead of just following up with that person's statement with my own opinion, maybe I'd ask them a question to better understand what it was they were saying. But I do think as politics heats up over the next few months, the very most important aspect of all of this is the not othering the other side. When we are together, be careful with our political speech. Let us not assume everyone around us thinks like us. Let's not assume we're all liberals or Democrats. In any given situation, imagine the other is standing within earshot. No matter who or what, imagine they're right there, right? I may think there's some terrible, corrupt executive from Exxon who knew climate change was happening anyway, but then sold, just terrible and greedy and whatever. But how I'm going to vent to somebody is if that person's standing right there, how would I say it? I would know. I mean, this is the good thing about actually being face to face with people, right? Is we do have a sense of empathy. We do recognize that we're going to be causing anger or conflict, or that we're, making somebody feel alienated or uncomfortable or something like that. So we respond more skillfully, even if it's important that we state something clearly. I think coming up, there are a lot of things we are going to need to speak up for. Compassionate treatment of immigrants, racial justice, making changes that mean that human beings can survive on this planet. But speaking up for those things, speak up for that thing, right? Rather than well, we all have the same opinion about that, and those people over there have the wrong opinion about that. I mean, why even go there? That's just an extra thing that makes us feel, that builds up our sense of self, and it's not fruitful. This is why the Buddha, I didn't even mention this one, but in the Dhammapada, hatred ends through non-hatred alone. Sometimes people say love, but it has to stop somewhere. So that's it for today. I will release one more episode during my August sabbatical, and in September, I will return with the kind of Zen Studies podcast episodes you have come to rely on, produced specifically for podcast listeners. I hope you'll tune in.
Thanks for listening.